Hello friends. Andy here from Great Ink Spectations, running through the Diamine Inkvent calendar. So here we have day one. This is Fortune's Gold, a chameleon ink, and really beautiful. This is in a Leonardo Momento Zero Grande 2.0 with a fine nib, and I am writing in the Endless Pens ink journal from the Ink Journal website. So this regalia paper is lovely. I really enjoy it. It sort of reminds me of a Cosmo Air Light. It does capture a lot of shading and sometimes makes it look like there's more shading than there really is on other papers, but that's okay. It has a beautiful chameleon shimmer, and while I don't know that I would use it a lot for everyday writing, I would use it sometimes. So I'm happy to use my sample, but I probably will not buy a full bottle. Now we have Cashemere Rose, and this is another one of my favorites colors in general of ink, this sort of beigey pink sort of color. So I really enjoy this one. It's also, in my opinion and my experience, hard to find an ink this color that is not super dry. And this one seems to flow pretty well. Now, I could be biased because this is in a Pelikan medium nib, and that is a very wet nib indeed. But for now, I really like this ink a lot. And so at the end of each swatch, I will show you that I have done some writing with this ink. I've been working on transcription, and I've used all of these inks, and so I'm able to give you a little bit more of my opinion than I maybe would have otherwise. So here I am putting down some comparison inks, and truly this was just too much trouble to do with all of them. Maybe if I'd stretched the filming out a little bit longer, but this first one is Laban Aphrodite Pink, and we also have Robert Oster Australis Rose, and actually Spadina Rose or Spadina Rose from Ferris Wheel Press, which you'll see in this swatch, is the most similar ink that I have in my collection. So day three, we have Early Dusk. This is a standard ink and one of my favorites out of the calendar. I'm usually not much of a blue person, to be honest, but I really like the sort of dustiness or duskiness to this ink. It has nice shading, and it is a little bit more of an interesting blue than most of the blues in my collection, honestly. It has sort of this cornflower blue, periwinkle blue feel to it that I really like. This is in a Banu pen with a medium nib, and it was really nice in this pen. I enjoyed writing with it a lot. It is one of the inks that I've written with the most so far, and just really nice shading, really lovely overall. Now, just to give you a little bit of context as to how I'm doing this, I received the Inkvent calendar for my birthday in early November, and so I did start opening inks in early November, one per day, so I could sort of enjoy the whole experience just a little bit early so I would have some time to film. So here we are looking at some comparisons. The first blue was Pelikan Royal Blue. That was Diamine something. I will put it down below since I missed it. And that is Ferris Wheel Press Storied Blue, which ended up being a lot too light and too dusky to match this. But there you see it in the transcription on Cosmo Air Light, and it does have some really nice shading. Day four, we have Masquerade, which is a shimmer ink, and this is a really interesting ink. I wasn't sure what I thought about it when I first used it. It sort of looks brown with gold shimmer at first, but it does dry down to more of that kind of dusky pink, a similar color to Cashemere Rose, but not exactly. I will show you a comparison here in just a little bit. But we have this in a Twisby Heat. I believe this is a fine nib. I'll write it down here in a second so I can see. But I really like the shimmer in this. It shows up really well, and the ink has a nice flow to it. So no complaints from me. And this is a medium nib, actually. So very good flow in the medium nib. I'm finding that I really enjoy Diamine, Shimmer, and Chameleon inks, I do think that they are much better behaved than some other shimmer inks with larger particles of shimmer. They are very consistent. It's very easy to agitate the shimmer to get it incorporated. And yeah, very pleased with these so far. Here's the transcription on Masquerade, and I'm just going to sort of flip the page over to compare it to Cashmere Rose. Cashmere Rose is pinker. Masquerade has more of that beigey tone to it. But I love that gold shimmer. It really stands out well. And on to the next. Here we have day 5. This is Nightfall. And if you've been keeping up with Atlas Stationers on Instagram, they have been doing sort of a head-to-head competition each day between 2 of the Inkvent inks. And Nightfall has been crushing it. It's been doing really, really well. This is a navy blue base with a really beautiful sort of blue-green shimmer. And I am using this in a Jinhao 9019 pen with a medium nib. And this pen is a chunk. It is so much fun to use. It has a huge nib that I think is supposed to be sort of reminiscent of Sailor King of Pen. And so it's a medium nib, but it writes a little bit more like a broad. But this ink has beautiful flow. It's really nicely lubricated, and that shimmer shows really beautifully. I think there's also some sheen in this one as well. It'll be a little bit hard to see on camera, but it is really, really beautiful, especially in the transcriptions. So I love Nightfall. I would definitely get a bottle of this. It sort of reminds me of Troublemaker Polar Lights, and I don't have anything like it in my collection right now. So here we are on to day 6. This is Buck's Fizz. That is a drink, apparently. I did not know that until this Inkvent. This is a chameleon ink, a beautiful orange color with a stunning kind of yellow gold shimmer. Now, I will say this one is not my favorite to write with. You can see me, I always sort of prime my pen, prime my nib when I'm using a very heavily shimmery ink, just to make sure I'm starting with a good flow. But this one felt a little bit dry. This is in a steel cursive smooth italic nib that I had ground with Kirkspear from Pen Realm, and it just wasn't a great fit for this ink. I feel like this ink is a little bit dry maybe for this nib in particular. I'm keen to try it in like a medium TWSBI, for instance, something that I am a little bit more used to, that I use a little more often, to see how it performs. It sort of dries down darker than what initially goes onto the paper, and so I think that was also an issue for me. I wanted to press a little bit harder than what was necessary to get more color down on the page. But it is a nice ink, very unique, but this is one that I don't think I'll be buying a bottle of. I will probably just enjoy the sample size from the Inkvent calendar. So here's the transcription with Nightfall. You can see that there is some sheen there, kind of a red maroon sheen, really beautiful. And some great, great shimmer on Buck's Fizz. Really pleased with all of these inks so far. You know, while I wouldn't purchase a bottle of every one, I do really like them. That was a Maiora ink. That was Noodler's Habanero. That was second. And Apache Sunset, now Southwest Sunset in comparison, as well as Iroshizuku Fuyu-gaki, maybe. I hope I'm correct. Again, I'll link the comparison inks down below, or list them out at least. So here we are with day 7, and perhaps the most controversial ink from the calendar thus far. This is Diamine's Sweet Dreams, and this is a scented ink. So this scented ink behaves like most scented inks. It is very wet. It has a tendency to feather, and not always behave the best. Now, I am using this in a Laban 325 with a fine nib, and this nib, I find it runs on the drier side, and so I did not have any trouble with this feathering on the Regalia paper. I didn't have any issues with it feathering on Cosmo Air Light, and it behaved in this pen on Tomoe River paper as well. So no complaints there. You just have to be very careful about what pen you put it in if you want it to behave well. You know, it's not going to do great in abroad probably. So yeah, just be cognizant of that. I do like the color. I like the pink color. It reminds me a lot of Hope Pink from Diamine. You'll see that in the comparisons, but not ideal. The scent didn't bother me. It's sort of a fruity candy scent. I don't see myself buying a full bottle of this one just because I do enjoy Hope Pink more, and I have a bottle of that already. So no bottles of this coming, but there is Pelikan Star Ruby, Iroshizuku Hana-ikada, and Diamine Hope Pink in comparison. Hope Pink, definitely the most similar, but still a winner. And that last one was Monteverde Rose Pink. Definitely a cooler toned pink. Here we are with day 8. This is Jacaranda. Jacaranda, I don't know how to say it. I know it's a tree. And you know, it's not the ink's fault. I started out with this ink in a Pilot Custom 74 in the violet colorway with a medium gold nib. And I just have issues with that nib. It's a beautiful writer. It's very bouncy, lovely, but it's also very broad and wet to the point of kind of a soft line. And I prefer a more crisp line. The older I get, the more I use fountain pens, the more I enjoy fine and extra fine nibs. And so I actually put this ink into a TWSBI fine and enjoyed it a whole lot more. It does have a beautiful kind of pink undertone, kind of this chroma shading quality that I really like. Not my favorite ink in the collection. Purples generally, you know, I have a lot of them and I don't find this one to be super unique. So I marked it as not for me, only because I would not buy a complete sample. You can see here I started the page with the Pilot, and around my thumb area is where I put it into the TWSBI for a little bit more concentrated color. And I don't even remember, I did not do comparisons for that one. Most of the purples in my collection are darker, and so I felt like there weren't any very great comparisons. So this is Moonbeam. This is another beautiful ink, very shimmery. I believe this one is a chameleon. Just looking at my references. Yes, it is a chameleon ink. The base is a very dark gray, and it has the greeny blue kind of tealish shimmer in it. Really pretty, but I do prefer the darker base color navy of Nightfall. This one had a great flow, very lubricated, no complaints there, just not my favorite combination, my favorite color combination. I do find that this reminds me a bit of Wearing Ghoul Half Moon and Dimmed Light, which I already own. So yeah, probably won't be buying a bottle of this one either, but it is a very, very nice ink in general. Thought it was really pretty in this TWSBI indigo and bronze. So I do like it. Again, probably wouldn't buy a whole bottle, but that's okay. Not every ink has to be purchased. These samples are a great size. So here is the writing sample. You can't see a ton of the shimmer. You mostly get that kind of watery gray color, but it does show up better in other places. Moving on to day 10, this is the last one that I have recorded for today. This is Velvet Emerald, and it is a standard ink. And I love this one. It was giving me Aurora Borealis vibes. It was giving me Monteverde California teal vibes. and it was really lovely in this Franklin Christoph Model 46 in the cathedral material. This is an extra fine nib, and it was coming down a little bit light when I started to write, but this pen just does that sometimes. It did kind of even out. This is a 14 karat extra fine nib, and this ink performed like a champ in this nib. It was pleasant. It was an average flow, not too much, but also not dry and stingy. So I really like this one a lot. And it did have some shading on the Cosmo Air Light. So I feel like inks that don't shade will shade on Cosmo Air Light. So I really enjoy all these inks. This is all I have for this first installment of the Diamine Inkvent calendar for 2023. I hope that you will hang around for future videos. There's Diamine Marine, Aurora Borealis is the closest thing that I have in my collection, and then Noodler's Blue Nose Bear, as well as Emerald of Chevor. So that's it for today. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll talk to you soon.